Starting on the driver's side of my Form A outside pre-trip inspection, I'm going to be starting with my alternator, making sure it's tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. I'm going to be checking my wires coming from the alternator, make sure there's no bare wires showing that could cause a short. My alternator and my water pump are both belt-driven components. I'm going to be checking both belts for the alternator and my water pump. I'll be making sure that it's free of any cuts or cracks, making sure they're not too tight or too loose. Too tight could ruin the bearings to my components. Too loose could slip off and not work properly. On both of my belts, I should have no more than 3/4 of an inch of play while pressing on them. Going on to my oil intake and my oil dipstick. This is where I'll be checking my oil level. To check the level, I take the dipstick out, wipe it down with a towel, take it in. If I needed to add oil, I would add it through the intake, making sure both caps are tight and secure, not cracked, broken, or missing. Here I have my power steering reservoir. Making sure it's tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not cracked or broken, and I'll be checking for any leaks on the ground. I'm making sure my cap is on tight and secure, not cracked, broken, or missing. To check my level to my power steering reservoir, I'll take my dipstick out, wipe it down, check for the proper level. If you follow the hose coming out of my reservoir, it takes you to the back over here to my power steering pump. I'm making sure my power steering pump is tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be checking for any leaks on the ground. Here above my power steering pump, I have my air compressor. My air compressor is tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be listening for any air leaks. I'll also be checking the main air line coming out of my air compressor from the back, making sure it's tight and secure at each end, free of any cuts, cracks, or bulges, and I'll be listening for any air leaks. My air compressor and my power steering pump are both gear-driven components. Going on to my air valve, my main air valve, making sure it's tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be listening for any air leaks. I'm going to be checking all the hoses coming out of my air valve, making sure they're tight and secure at each end, free of any cuts, cracks, or bulges, and I'll also be listening for any air leaks. Here I have my steering shaft. I'm making sure it's nice and straight, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. I'll also be checking my U-joints, making sure they're tight and secure with the proper set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. That should be well lubricated. Coming down to my steering gearbox, making sure it's tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be checking for any leaks. If my steering gearbox were to be leaking, it would need to be replaced or repaired before I continue my trip. Going down to my steering leakage. My steering leakage consists of 4 parts, which is my pitman arm, my drag link, my swing arm, and my tie rod ends. I'm making sure all of these components are not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, tight and secure with the proper castle nuts. The castle nuts are tight and secure with the proper cotter pin. I should have 4. 1, 2, 3. I should have 3. Okay, going on to my suspension. Here I have my spring mount. I'm making sure my spring mount is tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Here on the bottom I have my leaf springs. I'm making sure I have a full set of leaf springs. Should not be dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Following that back, I have my shock absorber. Making sure my shock absorber is tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be checking for any leaks. If my shock absorber were to be leaking, it will need to be replaced before I continue my trip. Going on to my mounting pad. Making sure my mounting pad is in its proper position, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Making sure my rubber stopper is not ripped or torn or missing to prevent any metal-to-metal contact. My U-bolts, which go around my mounting pad, are tight and secure with the proper set of nuts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Going on to my brake chamber.